Hi there, welcome to the month 3 video for the Primrose Garden block of the month. This month we will once again be making 2 matching pieced blocks, and they're very simple again. We are going to introduce a new unit, the square and a square unit. So at this point in month 1 we made the center medallion, and hopefully you've got it all fused down and you've done some stitching. I've heard from a lot of you, and it sounds like most people have at least gotten it fused. A lot of people are stitching already. I've even heard a couple of you have finished it already, which is fantastic. But just go ahead and keep stitching on that center block. I'm hoping that at this point you've also had a chance to make those month 2 blocks, and hopefully you found them simple and easy and a nice break from the handwork. So this month the block we're making is called Zig Zag Tile, and I'll show it to you here in the quilt. And then I'm going to take a second here and I'll show you a close-up of it in the quilt as well. Okay, so here in the quilt, there's 2 of them. One's up there above the center medallion, and then there's one down there in the corner, the zigzag tile block. And on point, it's a really cool looking block. And when you turn it and you see it straight on, you can see how simple it really is. It's made up entirely of half square triangles and 1 square and a square unit. So the top row there is just 4 half square triangles. In the center there is a square and a square unit and 2 half square triangles on either side of that. And the bottom row is again just 4 half square triangles. So it's simpler than it looks, and when you turn it on point, it is a really cool looking block. I love how the pinks and the reds go together this month and make that pretty color palette there. All right, so let's just go over how that block is put together. This month we're going to start off again with making some half square triangles, which we did half square triangles last month, so we will just review this quickly. But you're going to be making 8 half square triangles that have the cream and the red plaid, and you're going to make 16 half square triangles that have the cream and the red plus sign. So just to review, you're going to take the cream squares. You're cutting a bunch of cream 3-inch squares. You're going to draw a diagonal line on the back of those, place them right sides together with your red squares. You'll sew a 1/4 inch on either side of that diagonal line. Then you'll cut on the line, press those apart, and they are oversized, so we are once again going to trim them down with our Tucker trimmer ruler that we reviewed and went over last month. These get trimmed to 2.5 inches, and they will be 2-inch finished half square triangles. So once you've made your 8 plaid and your 16 plus sign, then I'm going to have you put them together in pairs, and you're going to make 8 pairs that look like this. Okay, we're putting them together in pairs first because they're going to go on either side of a larger unit. It's also just going to make assembling the block a lot easier when we get to that point. Be careful when you put these together that you've got the orientation correct. You've got the plaid one on one side and the plus sign one on the other. So just lay them out. The pattern has a nice diagram here. I'll show you that. Lay them out so they look just like the diagram, and then sew together 8 sets of those. So that is step 1, half square triangles, put them together in pairs. Step 2 then, we are going to make our square and a square units that go in the center. And we're going to use a new ruler this month. It's the Squared Square ruler by Deb Tucker. And this is another fantastic ruler. Prior to the Deb Tucker ruler, I always struggled to get my square and a square units to be square and to be straight. It always seemed like one of the corners was kind of waving at me. So I love this ruler. I find it very helpful for making this unit. If you have another square and a square ruler that does oversized and trim down, or that works for you, that's fine, whatever trim down ruler you have. But we are making them slightly oversized so that we can trim them down and have them be perfect. So to start with, I have you cutting out 3 3/8 inch squares from the pink square fabric. And that is pretty darn close to what you need for the center. But if you're a math person, you probably realize that the math, when you set things on point, doesn't always come out exactly to an 1/8 inch mark. technically you need this square to be something like 3 5/16, that something you couldn't cut on a regular ruler. So the square in a square ruler, what it does is it gives you on one side, it tells you, so you can see that there, that this is the size you're gonna cut for a center square for a 4-inch finished block. So we're gonna take that, we're gonna lay it on top of that 3 3/8 inch square that we cut. And I don't know if you can see there, but we're gonna end up trimming off just a tiny little bit. And that's just gonna make it so that it's the perfect size for the center of that square in a square unit. Apparently my rotary cutter needs a new blade. So here's what I trimmed off of it. It wasn't much, but it's enough that it does make a small difference. So it's nice to start with those centers perfect. The next thing we're gonna do is we've got some triangles that we cut out of the red plaid. And these were 3 1/4 inch squares that we cross cut diagonally to get these triangles. And that's all in the cutting directions, of course. So we're gonna take those and we're gonna sew them onto 2 sides of that square that we trimmed down to be perfect. You're gonna do your best to center these. Because it's oversized and you're gonna end up trimming it down, you don't have to get it perfectly in the center, but if you want to make sure it's centered, what I do is I always kind of just finger press that in the middle. And then I have a center mark here that I can line up the tip of my triangle. We're putting these right sides together, line up those edges, and there's where I'm gonna sew my 1/4 inch seam. So I'll sew those onto either side and end up with a unit like so. Now at this point, you can trim these even if you want. I tend to not, I tend to just go ahead and sew the other 2 triangles on. So you'll sew these 2 on, press them out, trim even if you prefer, and then you're gonna go ahead and add the 2 remaining triangles to the other 2 sides. So you'll get, this is your square in a square unit. And here's my finished one. Well, it's almost finished, it needs to be trimmed still. But you can see I've got plenty of wiggle room there. I'm not gonna lose any points when I trim this because I've got far more than a 1/4 inch between the point and the edge. And so this is the point when I get to trim it with my square in a square ruler. And I love this ruler for squaring up because it's got marks that line up right with that center square. I don't know if you can see it, but this is a 4-inch finished unit, which it tells you in the directions. So right here, there's little 4s and a dotted line that's gonna sit in my center square. So when I put this on my unit, let's see here. There it is, beautiful. So I've got little 4 kind of rooftop peaks here that match up in each of the corner, and a dotted line that is sitting in all of my seams right here all around. And you can see I've got a pretty good amount to trim off of this one. That's just the way this one works. So you'll set that in place there. Let me get it just so. And I will trim the first 2 sides up the side and across the top. I'm at the shop this morning and made the mistake of just grabbing the rotary cutter that we use to cut kits, and definitely could use a new blade. All right, now I'm going to turn the unit around, and again, all of those points there with the 4s are in my corners. There's also a 4 1/2 inch box that's going to sit on the edges I just trimmed, and then I can go ahead and trim the remaining 2 sides with my horrible rotary cutter. Okay, and voila, perfect square in a square unit. It's perfectly square, it's not waving at me, and I have all of my 1/4 inch seams there, so I'm not gonna lose any points. So once you get to that point, you've got your square in a square unit, you've got your little half square triangle pairs that you put together. Oops, that one's gonna go on like that. And then you've got a couple of half square triangles left for the corners as well. And I'm gonna just show you the diagram here, can show you pretty clearly how you're gonna put it together. You're gonna put it together into 3 rows a row of half square triangles, a row of one of those half square triangle pairs, the square and a square unit, and another half square triangle pair, and a third row of half square triangles. Just be very careful of the orientation of these. This is an easy one to get things turned around. As you can see, I set this up like that and I've already got it turned around wrong. So look at the diagram, lay your 3 rows out just like the diagram has shown. Sew it into 3 rows. I have given you some pressing arrows there to help. So just follow those and then sew your 3 rows together. So I think that is everything for this month. Let me go ahead and turn this back up so I can say goodbye. If you have questions or concerns, feel free to always email me or message me. The email at the shop, the best one to reach me at is Katie, Katie, @peacefulgathering.com. We have a Peaceful Gathering Facebook page too, and I'd love to see your progress on there. If you want to show us how you're coming on your center block or what you're working on, we'd love to see that. So thank you so much for watching the month 3 video, and we will see you again next month where we'll be doing 2 more piece blocks. So we've got a couple more months until we do more applique. So keep up with the stitching, get that stitching done. Month 6 is when we start to look at those borders. So finish up your hand stitching, make these 2 piece blocks, and we will see you again next month for more piecing. Thanks.